Okay, so you guys see this right here? Yeah, I was gonna record my first podcast episode outside today, but let me get back inside. Yeah, that is not going to happen outside. All right, welcome. Love and wholeness to you all. I'm Razir, and this is the Sacred Heart Space. And I was going to record my first podcast episode outside by this beautiful lake in a park that I love going to here in Kuala Lumpur. But you might be able to see and probably hear it's a thunderstorm right now. So please excuse any lightning flashes that you may see in the background and any thunder that you might hear. So I'm just calling this episode 0 because this is just me, the very first episode, just setting the tone for what is to come. And I'm traveling the world right now. I'm traveling currently in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I was just in Bali, met so many beautiful souls there, so many beautiful people there, and so many people that I want to record podcast episodes with. And so many of the conversations that I had with many of the people there, those could have been episodes, full-blown podcast episodes in themselves. So that was all just confirmation that, I need to just get started with this because this is the Sacred Heart Space. Not the secret heart space, the sacred heart space. And it's just this podcast, my whole intention with this podcast is to connect with more people and display and show what a heart-to-heart connection looks like, what it feels like, what it is like to experience a heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection, while also discerning and balancing that with the mind, the mental connection, the intellectual connection. So that's what this whole podcast is about. The Sacred Heart Space is just exploring connection to the heart. And then also as a secondary to that, not just exploring through the heart, but also exploring with the mind as well. Because for me, that is my love language. Like I love diving into other people's, universes, their innerverses, and really just exploring what it is that they feel comfortable sharing, to understand who it is they are as a person, or who it is that they are as a person, and what they are as a being, and how they're choosing to live this life, how they're choosing to walk their path. I'm very, very curious about that. And I love just seeing how people light up and open up in regards to expressing their true selves, expressing their passions. Is like, for me, this is me right here, exploring and expressing one of my passions. So I don't have any guests today because, again, I'm just setting the tone. I'm just setting the tone for what's to come in the very near future. But I already do have some guests lined up, and it'll be a mixture of, through Zoom calls to, have guests as I'm traveling the world, because there are people back home in California that I want to interview, but obviously I'm not there right now. And so some of those interviews will be happening virtually. And then as I'm traveling, meeting different people, I want to have, different places that I go to and interview different people, so that they can share what they do, who they are, and what their path consists of, and what a heart-to-heart connection is like for them. So as I travel, we're going to have a mixture of in-person interviews and, on-site, on-location interviews, and also virtual interviews. So it'll be kind of like a hybrid approach. So moving forward, that is the tone that's being set. And the guests who I plan to have on, they're all people who I see are living from their heart. And when I say living from their heart, what I really mean is they're living in alignment with what their heart is telling them to do. They're letting their heart, they're being guided by love and through love, and living life not just from up here in the mind, where the mind is more duality based. The heart is centered. The heart is grounded. The heart is, I don't call it, but the name that people have for it, especially if you know who Junvila Melchizedek is, the name that they have for it is called the Sacred Heart Space. It's called the 0 point field. So the 0 point space, or the 0 point field of the heart. That's where there's no beginning, there's no end. It's just this full presence. There always is and always was. Just like creation. And God said, let there be light and everything, but still, everything was already before. So, I know it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but that's what the sacred heart space is. Just connecting from that place of no beginning, of no end, of no judgment. It's just pure presence rooted in love, expressing love, embodying love. So these are the people who I plan to interview. I won't say any names yet, but if you do have any suggestions, I'm definitely open to them, because again, as I travel, I'm always open to and excited to meet new people and explore who it is that they are and what they're doing in this life. And so whenever I connect with somebody that I feel is living from their heart as well, I want to interview them. And so if you know, those of you who are watching this right now, if you know of anybody who is living from their heart and also is doing something to, give back to the world, to share that love with the world, whether it is that they have a business, they have like a nonprofit organization, or they're just someone who is walking their path, not, as an entrepreneur or anything, but they're just walking their path and living in alignment with their heart and fulfilling their purpose through whatever it is that they're doing. I want to interview them. I want to talk with them and see if they align with what we have here, with this platform that I'm setting up. So let me know. But moving forward, a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Razir. I also go by Razir the Wise One. And I'm all about living from the heart, but also self-mastery, inner mastery. Because living from the heart is such a huge part of self-mastery, mastering yourself from within. And that's something that I've been practicing technically since I came out the womb, but I've been consciously walking this walk for the past 14, almost 15 years now. Dang. Man, it is really going wild out there. But again, I love, just a quick side note, I love the variation of, the weather out here. Even though it's hot all the time, right now, like a thunderstorm outside, it's raining so hard that I can't even see barely like the building that's across the way over there. But I just love how it can switch up like that, because I'm from Southern California, where it's great weather mostly year round, but at the same time there's hardly any variation, meaning sometimes it's a little bit windy, sometimes it rains, not very often because it's technically a desert climate, but sunshine every day, all day. It can get a little bit boring, but again, that's what I appreciate about traveling, is that I get to experience so much more of life than what I'm used to back at home. So even though I'm grateful to be from Southern California and to have grown up there, I'm so grateful to be able to experience so much more of what Earth has to share with us, Mother Earth has to share with us. So as I'm traveling, as I'm walking this earth, I'm not just focused on what life has to offer, what Earth has to offer, what a city has to offer. To me, that's more like the colonizer mindset, the colonizer mentality. I operate with the mentality of, how can we coexist? How can we benefit each other? How can things be mutually beneficial between me and the earth, the location, the land that I'm interacting with? Because again, I'm of the belief of, and the mentality of, giving back and leaving places better than when I came. So, if I see trash on the ground, I like to pick it up. Just do what I can, just stuff like small things, big things, whatever it is. I like to do what I can to just, make this place a better space, better environment for all of us to live. Because that's, again, just me living from the heart. So getting back to what I was saying before, I've been consciously walking this path for nearly 15 years now. And that was a loud one right there. But I've been walking this path for nearly 15 years. And it started off with me listening and discovering the music that I love, which is hip hop, jazz too, but especially hip hop. Started with when I was listening to, so let me just go through it real quickly, briefly. So, see, like whenever I talk about music, I light up too, because music is another one of my passions. So, Started when I was about 14 years old. That's when I got my first iPod Touch. And it started actually, discovering the music that I like. Not just listening to the radio or listening to what other people were playing around me, but actually discovering what it is that I like, as myself. And when I first discovered Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, his very first album, I was like, yo, there are some gems on here. And then this was all on YouTube. So in like related videos and stuff, I came across songs off of Nas' Illmatic. And then that was like, oh man, yo, I love this right here. And then I came across songs off of Midnight Marauders, Tribe Called Quest. And yo, as soon as I discovered Tribe Called Quest, it was just like, yep, I love this. I'm in love with this. I feel like I've always been in love with this. I just didn't know it. And I'm just discovering what it is that I already love. So that's what it was like for me. And then, I started getting into people like MCs like Lord Finesse, like KRS-One, like Common, like especially Wu-Tang Clan, Method Man especially. Shout out to my Pisces brethren. Like just a lot of conscious, and at the time it was mainstream hip hop, but as I got more into hip hop, discovered more artists from today like Pro Era, especially Capital Steez, Ab Soul, Nick Jenkins, people like that who are not mainstream but conscious. And that was like my proclivity that I loved. I loved hip hop with a message, with a good positive message. And don't get me wrong, like I like NWA and Wu-Tang Clan is still very street, but they got so much knowledge in their songs. So I really love when MCs would drop gems, because specifically like Rakim, like Eric B. and Rakim, the God MC Rakim, like his song, is it In the Ghetto or The Ghetto? I think it's just called The Ghetto. But the second verse on that song, man, talking about traveling, basically astral traveling or remote viewing, traveling the world as a thought form, and just how he vividly describes everything that he's seeing from his mind without even leaving the confines of his room. But spiritually in his soul, he's out of there. And that was that kind of hip hop, man, that kind of lyricism, that kind of rap, that just speaks to my soul. And like Method Man, his hook on, or the chorus on Bring the Pain, I came to bring the pain hardcore from the brain, let's go inside my astral plane. That right there, I was like, yo, what astral plane? Like what is he talking about right there? What is the astral plane? And then hearing people like Common mention the third eye and stuff like that. And who really sparked it though, I mentioned before, Capital Steez, Pro Era. Yo, man. Yo. Capital Steez, bro. May he rest in peace. May his soul rest in peace, wherever he is on his travels, on his journey. But man, seeing someone my age, I think he was only 2 years older than me, but seeing someone my age talk about so much real stuff, but not just, the reality that he's seeing in front of him, but the spiritual side of things as well. Talking about, how he's growing up in the song Free the Robots, like talking about society, but also talking about how it's affecting him, and also freeing the people who are affected by this matrix system that we're in. And so many more so many things. And he has one, it's not his song, but it's off Peep the Apocalypse. I think this kind of like the only official group album. I think they have one more, but this is like the main one that popped off, like Peep the Apocalypse. His song Interlude 47. Well, he's featured on that song Interlude 47. He starts the song off by talking about astral projecting with the girl and, getting busy with her in the astral plane. And he starts off by saying, Let's escape into the universe, but let me show you how to do it first. Sit patient till you feel a tingling sensation. Don't start shaking, relax, and try to take it. It's ecstasy, but mentally just let it be telepathy with God, which your eyes don't get to see. He's talking about astral projection right there. And dang, yo, that thunder, that sounded like a missile, but well, I don't want to say that. that might be the wrong term to use right now, but that sounded wild. But man, Interlude 47, Capital Steez, he's talking about astral projection, and just hearing so many repeated words like the astral planes, astral travel, the third eye, the chakras, and like Capital Steez used one word called psychopomp. I was like, yo, what in the world is a psychopomp? He said psychopompous, but the world doesn't know what a psychopomp is. I love his wordplay. Like, outside of just his subject matter, like the way that he rhymed, his cadence, his delivery, his flow. Like he was a masterful MC, and he was only 19 when he passed. And he's like, to me, he's in that category of like Big L, like that what if category. Like, what if he actually did, continue living and continue his path and trajectory as an MC, and also not just an MC but a leader for the younger generation. So that's what it was for me. Like hearing all these repeated words, hearing somebody that is only 2 years older than me, and also in the group, there's a lot of people in the group pro era like Joey Badass, and I think Nick Caution, a few others are like my same age, born in 95. And yeah, just like hearing these group of young men, these group of teenagers, being a teenager at the time myself, it just resonated so differently with me. It hit so different. And that's when I really started looking into astral projection. Is I was already meditating before that, but I didn't know about astral projection. I knew about lucid dreaming, but I didn't know about astral projection. And so listening to all that music, that conscious hip hop, that guided me to astral projection. I looked it up on Google. I think I looked it up on YouTube as well. Came across my first teacher, Ryan Cropper. And he, back then especially, like his YouTube channel popped off because of astral projection and people having an interest in it. And I didn't know that many other people were interested in it, because the video that I saw, I think at the time, it had like, it was a tutorial on astral projection. And I think at the time it only had like, but it had like 90,000 or 100,000 views. And I was shocked to see that many people were actually interested in it, because this is something I had no idea about. But then again, it was also somebody who was I think he's only like a year older than me. So again, somebody who's my age, that's practicing, that has already achieved a level of mastery within this that I can learn from. Again, that hit different. It's not like I'm learning from an elder that's, like 30 or 40 years older than me. I'm learning from someone that's in my same age bracket. And he's from the UK, I'm from Southern California. So different cultures, different upbringings, but at the same time, I feel a connection because, one, we're born around the same time. We're seeing things very similarly. We're seeing reality very similarly. He was more advanced on the path, and I was just starting my path consciously back then. So getting into like that whole 2012 era of like 2012, the world is ending and everything like that, that was just an awakening for real. Like that was a mass awakening, and I was in that. Being that I said like I was already walking my path before that, I'll get into that in a little bit, but 2012, that's when everything shifted. 2012, I was a senior in high school. I was like really starting to discover myself. A lot of it's through music, and then now through this new thing called astral projection, or new to me thing called astral projection. And I'm starting to study things that I've been having the questions for, but didn't have the answers for. And so going back to what I said about walking my path already before this part, like since I was out the womb, I was always very observant. Like I remember being like maybe like 2 or 3 years old, and I'd just sit in the living room and I would just observe what's going on around me. And I'd be so curious that I'd ask myself questions of like, not out loud, but in my mind, I remember asking the question of, why can't I see air? May sound strange, may sound crazy to you, but I had these questions of like, why can't I see air? Like, what is air really? Like, we perceive air as empty space, but is that like we're breathing stuff in? We're breathing in oxygen. I didn't have all these, all the terminology back then as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but internally it made sense, and I was questioning these same things that I have the words for now, and I'd question like, like, what is this? Like, what is this medium that's in front of me right here that I'm interacting with right now, but I can't consciously feel it. I can't grab it. I can't grasp it. So I literally sit there and just stare into the light. I try to see and understand what light is, what these light particles are. And I just sit and stare, and I'd be unknowingly meditating, but with my eyes open and just observing what's going on in front of me. And the longer that I stared, the more I'd actually see what I perceive now as energy flowing throughout the room. And then I'd kind of test myself. I'd snap out of it, come out of that state, that intense focus, and then I'd go back into it again, and then come out of it, and then I go back into it again, and I keep seeing the same things. So I knew I was onto something, and I was trying to discover what this reality really is. What is it that we're actually doing here? What are we? Who are we as beings? And the more that I was introduced to religion through my parents and everything, I had more questions. So what is God? Who is God? Where is God? Why do we call it a he? Why are we supposed to fear God? Like, all these questions were coming up. And back then I didn't have the means to really get the answers, because I'd ask as like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I didn't want to go to Sunday school. I didn't want, when my parents would take me to church, I did not want to go to Sunday school. I didn't want to be around the other kids, because just, I guess intuitively, I knew that what they were learning, and also just from a few experiences that I've had in Sunday school, I thought it was boring. It was boring, is that because I wanted to learn. I wanted to really grow and learn from, coming straight out the womb. I wanted to understand what's going on and learn everything about this reality that I'm in. But in Sunday school, it's just the same rhetoric, the story of Adam and Eve, and the Noah's Ark and everything. And I'm just like, okay, those stories are cool, but what do they actually mean? What are they actually telling me? What's the real message behind it? That's what I wanted to know. But of course, nobody else in my age and that's in those Sunday school sessions wanted to really know that. They're just there mostly to socialize and learn, what I call the surface level stuff. Ask the Sunday school teacher about, certain things, did not get a good answer, or good answers that actually satisfied me. And so I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to go to Sunday school anymore. I want to stay out here and learn from the preacher. I want to learn from the pastor. And, I want to learn what you guys are learning. So that's where my mind was at. That's where my heart was at. But again, the more that I listened, the more that I observed, the more questions that I had, because things just did not make sense to me. So, yeah, again, I asked my mom questions. I asked my uncle questions. I asked the actual pastor, meet the pastor and everything, ask him questions, but none of it was satisfying to me. It was always very dogmatic. And again, I didn't have all this terminology back then, because I was only 5 or 6 years old. But speaking now, as my current self, looking back, yeah, I perceived it as those are just dogmatic answers, and they don't actually satisfy my soul. So again, I was still looking, still questioning, and I would go within myself through meditation, because I just sit there and either observe my reality, or I remember before going to sleep at night, I'm laying there with my eyes closed, and I'm just questioning, so what are these thoughts? What are thoughts? Where do thoughts come from? Just stuff like that. So always curious. So I would be meditating, but I didn't even know that I was meditating. And then fast forward to when I was in high school, my first iPod Touch and everything, I had a way to actually research stuff and either gain confirmation or, get put onto new things like astral projection and, remote viewing and everything like that, lucid dreaming. A lot of the information that I was coming across was confirming what I already intuitively and instinctively knew within myself, but I didn't know that it was actually true. So essentially, from that 2012 year onward to now 2026, about 14 years, going on 15 years pretty soon, I spent all this time finding the answers within myself, going within, learning from different teachers, learning from my higher self, learning from my own intuition, listening to God within me, going through depression, overcoming depression, learning what anxiety is, just everything, learning from every experience that I've been through in order to become the person, the man that I am today, the soul that I am today. Because the more that I venture on this path, the more that we venture on this path, the more that we understand that it's not really a pursuit of knowledge or wisdom, it's really just uncovering who we truly are and what we truly are, and remembering who we truly are and what we truly are. That's all this journey really is, just a journey of remembrance. So that's where I'm at today. And I'm very proud of how far I've come, because I've been in some very, very dark, very traumatic and harmful situations and environments that have really hurt me and caused a lot of trauma and scarred me very deeply. But at the same time, I chose to heal. I chose to do the inner work that, again, just allows me to come back to my true self. I'm not the pain, I'm not the trauma, I'm not the experiences. Yes, I was the person that experienced that, but I do not have to take on that pain as myself. That pain does not define me. Whatever it is, the programming that I grew up in and that I, carried up until adulthood and deprogram myself, reprogram myself, none of that defines who I am. None of that defines what I am. Because what I am is the I am, same as you, same as all of us. We are the I am that is spoken of in the Bible, that's spoken of in many different religious and spiritual texts, all throughout time, all throughout human history. I am that I am. I am the I am. That is, in human language, the closest we can say to what we actually are, what this reality truly is. So it's like in Taoism, they have the saying, those who know don't speak, those who speak don't know. So there's certain levels that we can get to with language, but then beyond that, language does not serve a purpose. And this is why another one of my teachers there is Jay Wright. Shout out to my soul system majestic for putting me onto him. He's another out-of-body experience master. I know I was saying astral projection earlier because that's what I knew it as, but with my new teacher, Darius J. Wright, he describes the difference between astral projection and out-of-body experience. And what it is that we do is we actually have out-of-body experiences. So from now on, I'm going to address it as that. OBEs or out-of-body experiences. So that's also someone who I really want to interview, Darius J. Wright. That's might be the only name that I drop today that I like to interview. But what was I going to say? Yeah, with a new teacher. Dang, this happens sometimes where I go off on a little bit of a tangent and then I lose my original train of thought. But I'm sure it'll come back to me. So just moving forward with that, I've had, oh yeah, thank you. See, trust and you shall receive. So what I was going to say is, with Darius J. Wright, I love how he explains it and breaks it down, because he explains this reality as, well, I can't really do it justice right now with my own words, but essentially through his own experience and through experience of many others, his students that he teaches, and others like myself who have experienced the other side, so to speak, through formerly known as astral projection, out-of-body experiences. Through out-of-body experiences, you see what reality truly is, and it's more real than this 3D reality. It feels more solid, more stable, yet you can still pass through things as if you're not solid or stable. So it's in my own words, the way that I describe it is when you achieve the out of body state, when you as your soul leaves this body, not in death, but through just the practice of having the out of body experience. When you leave your body, you see just how much more real it all is. In my own words, I say it's going from like 720p, definition, regular HD definition, to like 4K or 8K quality. That's what it's like. And it's, for me, I can't put more words to it than that, other than you just have to experience it yourself. And with this podcast, we're not trying to define what truth is, because there is no one definition of truth. You can only describe it. That's why we have art. That's why we have our passion. That's why we have so many different ways of self-expression, because all our passions are for is to lead us back to the truth of what we are and what this reality is. That's why there's so many different ways, so many different mediums to express yourself, so many different mediums of art. I personally love writing, writing hip hop, not writing hip hop, but writing rap, writing lyrics. I love making beats. I love just music in general. I just love being creative through music. And then second to that, I love talking, conversing with people. That's another reason why I created this podcast. And the actual story of the creation of this podcast is a little bit crazy. So I'll share that at the end of this. But that's one of my passions as well, is, like I said earlier, exploring the inner worlds of not only myself but of other people as well, because each of us, we're our own universe. And just the beauty of connecting from the heart and the soul, connecting intellectually, connecting from one being to the other. It's so beautiful. It's so just spectacular to me, because it's like we all have our own experiences. We all have our own way of life. We're all living our own unique experience. And to be able to share and learn from one another and grow with one another and expand with one another, we water each other, we nurture each other. That connection is just so beautiful to me. It's just another thing that can't be put into words, but you feel it, you see it, you know it, you experience it. That's what this podcast is about. And I think I will just get into the actual creation process of this podcast. Let me turn off this AC real quick. But I think I will get into that. So yeah, this goes back to months ago. So I had a mushroom journey, right? So I took some magic mushrooms, and it wasn't just, recreational. It was very intentional. I'm always intentional whenever I use plant medicine. So I was called to take these mushrooms, and going back to the theme of connection, I was called to do have a ceremony with some of my close friends. At the time, it was the person that gave me the mushrooms and another one of my brothers. So I felt very, very called to have the journey, the ceremony with them. And at first, they're down with it. They're on board with it. And so, we're just locking in a date to set it up, and a date and a place to set it up. But then my brother told me that he couldn't do it. He had some other things, and it just didn't really feel right for him at the time. And then basically the same thing happened with my friend who was giving me the mushrooms. So I had the mushrooms, but I didn't have anybody to partake in the ceremony with. And so I still felt called to take them. And so I said, screw it. I'm just going to take them on my own, do it by myself. And I did it mostly at night too. I took them right as the sun was setting. And, so it was dark for the majority of my trip. And during that journey, man, that was the most amount of pain that I've experienced at one time ever in my life. That was by far the most pain that I've ever experienced. at one time in my life. And it wasn't physical pain, it was emotional pain. It was all the pain that was coming up within me at one time, dealing with abandonment issues, dealing with the pain of rejection, the pain of feeling alone, feeling isolated, and just feeling disconnected from people around me. Because I think I mentioned before, I have overcome depression, but just because you overcome something doesn't mean that you're fully healed from it. And so what I realized was that pain of isolation, that pain of feeling and being alone, not having anyone to talk to. And quick side note, that's why I discovered my passion for writing, because I didn't have anybody to talk to when I was going through it. When I was really at my lowest point, I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I decided, you know what? I love hip hop. These people, these MCs, they express themselves through words, through writing, through lyrics. Let me try out doing the same thing. I have nothing else to do, so let me try it out. And I fell in love with it. So that's how that came about. And yeah, just going through those experiences, those painful experiences, and trying to reach out to people but not having the energy be reciprocated, and just craving connection but not receiving it. So always just resorting back to myself. Like, okay, I'm not receiving the connection that I want, that I feel like I need. So let me just go within myself. For every hurtful experience, for every painful experience, that was always my reaction, my response to it. Okay, let me just go back within myself. I'm just gonna go within myself and handle this on my own. So I got used to doing that. And even though it was painful, I got used to the pain. And so just over the years, all the years of, let's say, how many years was it like? Well, really, most of my life, not to say that I was rejected and, alone for all of my life, but I'll get to that, I'll get to this next point right now, but I was feeling all of it. I was feeling all the pain from every part of my life that had to deal with rejection and feeling alone, feeling isolated and disconnected from others. And as I was, all this pain was coming up, all this emotional pain, it then was transferred into physical pain, because as some of you know, hopefully all of you know, the mind and the body are connected. So whatever pain you experience emotionally, mentally, the body carries that unless you process it and release it. I processed it, but I didn't release it. So that's where all the pain still needed to come up to be released. And so as I was feeling all that pain, it was just like in the pit of my stomach, just the worst pain I've ever experienced. And I was laying on the ground. Sometimes I felt the need to sing it out, just vocalize it, just try to move the energy. Other times laughter would come up, other times tears would flow, I'd cry. And it was just my body's attempts of releasing the pain. But there's so much, and it was just so overwhelming that no matter what I did, it just was not enough. And as I was sitting with it, because I had no other choice, I couldn't run away from it, so I had no other choice but to sit with it. And as I was sitting with it, I chose to observe it, observe the pain, no judgment. And the message that came through for me while I was sitting with it was the numbers 6 and 24. Keep in mind, at this time, I'm 30 years old. Right now, I'm 31. This was a few months back, and I was still 30 at the time. So the numbers 6 and 24 kept coming up to me. The message 6 and 24. And obviously you add that up, that's 30. So I knew it had something to do with my time, the time that I spent on Earth, my time that I spent here in this lifetime. And the more that I sat with it, the more I realized, these two numbers, 6 and 24, they represent the accumulative years that I've been, social and, connected and interacting with others, versus the cumulative time that I spent alone in isolation, in solitude, And the number 6 was the amount of years accumulated that I spent, actually being in communication and in community with others, being connected and talking, conversing, my bad, talking and conversing and, hanging out, spending time with other people, versus 24 accumulative years where I was spent in isolation. I spent in solitude that then turned into isolation that caused me to feel very disconnected. So that was the spirit of the mushrooms in my soul telling me what I needed to correct and rebalance within my life. Because solitude is great. Solitude is wonderful. It is an absolutely crucial and necessary tool in personal growth and development and self-mastery. But too much of it, like anything in life, too much solitude can be very, very detrimental. And that's what I experienced, the detriment of solitude, the detriment of solitude turning into isolation and turning into pain as a result of that isolation and feeling disconnected. So that's all the pain that was coming up within me. And again, the more that I sat with it, the more intense it got. But I knew that I had to feel all of it in order to release it all. The more, the deeper that I went within myself, the more the more pain that I experienced, I knew this isn't the only thing that I'm going to experience. I'm also going to experience the other side of this as well. The joy, the happiness, the fruit, just everything that is the opposite of pain and sorrow and despair and depression and anxiety and hurt and stress. I'm going to experience the opposite of that. So that's what led me to keep going through it with this journey. Because like I said, I had no option but to just face it if I really wanted to overcome this. So the mushroom trip, it ended. I went to sleep. I was still feeling the pain. I was still feeling it all. And I still felt it all for the next 5 days straight. So I was just so out of it, not out of it, but I was so consumed by what I was feeling and what I was experiencing internally that it was so difficult to function. It was so difficult to just, do what I needed to do in life. And pardon me, but during that time, I kept going to the river, the hiking trail with a river that I love spending time at. And I was sitting by the water, and all this is part of the story of how this podcast came to be. So I was sitting by the water, right? And I was just so distraught. I was so sad and so feeling all the pain. And I was just sometimes I'd cry, but again, at the same time, there's a long period of time in life where I just did not cry. I couldn't cry. And part of the aspect within myself that I still need to heal is the aspect that feels unsafe to actually express vulnerable emotions around other people, and also just within myself as well, because when I would start to cry, a few tears would come out, and I'd still feel like there's so much more that needs to come up and be expressed through tears, through crying. But a few tears would come out, and I would exhale, I would cry, exhale, the tears would come out, but then when I inhale, tears would stop. And I knew that was just, a symptom of the conditioning and the programming that I subjected myself to. And so I did my best, but at the same time, I knew there's still so much more that needed to come up and be released and be expressed. And so rather than just relying on the tears, I just started speaking, just verbally speaking. And it turned into praying and then just talking, just calling out, crying out to God. And I remember sitting by the river, I was saying something along the lines of how come it's so difficult for me to connect with other people? How come I can't just hang out with friends? How come I can't, do what most other people do, which is, just have an actual social life and, healthily socialize with other people and have friends, have close loved ones around them who they can actually talk to and, share things with and express things to. how come I don't have that? How come it's so difficult for me to have that? Because even though at the time I did have a friend that became close that was living nearby, there was still a lot of like misalignments happening to where I wanted to hang out, but something came up, or they were busy, or I was busy. Something would always come up. Not always, but a lot of the time something would come up. And the rest of my friends, they were at least an hour away. Some were an hour plus away, hour and a half. One of my best friends, like 5 or 6 hours away. So I didn't have, the friend group that I could just call upon and be like, yo, like, I need to talk about something, man. Like, I need to hang out and be around other people right now. I didn't have that option. And so that's again when I just turned to God. I was crying by the river, just saying like, yo, like, why is it so difficult for me? Why has it always been so difficult for me to just have friends and, just be able to express myself with other people? And in that moment of just raw vulnerability in the elements, sitting by the water, sitting on the rocks, and just really with the intention of talking to God, knowing that God is within me and all around me. And in that moment, that's when the light bulb went off. It was like, oh, wait, I can, since all my friends are busy and everything, it may not be as ideal, but I can schedule, times to talk with them and just basically turn it into a podcast. And that's when I sat with it more, explored more of the idea. And at first it was going to be called the Live From Your Heart podcast. And then again, the more I meditated on it, these days later and everything, the more I sat with it, the more the name of the Live From Your Heart podcast didn't really resonate fully. I knew there was something else. And that's when the name Sacred Heart Space came to me. And so essentially that's the story of how this podcast came to be. It came from like me experiencing one of the lowest points of my life emotionally, and just through all the pain that was there, and just having that one that one light bulb moment, that's what led to this. And this is leading to so many more connections that I've been craving and wanting to explore more for most of my life, quite literally. And now this is like, in this society, everyone's busy, everyone's doing things. So it's more difficult, especially in Western cultures, Western society, to just call someone up, chill out, hang out, and talk. But not bypassing that, but overcoming that obstacle of the societal hurdles that are there for us. This was the solution that not only helps me, not only helps the person that I'm interviewing and connecting with, but also helps more people who are watching this, the audience who are watching this, you who are watching this. So it's just like, this is not just a win-win. This is a win-win-win for me, a win for my guests, a win for the audience as a whole. So that's how the podcast came to be. And then after I had that breakthrough with that, and then after I made just again more sitting with the emotions and really observing, really doing my best to understand what they are, why they're there, where they came from, and what they are leading me to within myself, where they're leading me to within myself. After that is when I realized, this was after the 5th day, or on the 5th day, I woke up and I knew I had to make the decision to not lean back into myself, but to lean into connecting with others. So instead of making the same decision that I kept making all throughout my life, of whenever I was faced with rejection or anything in that vein, I went back into relying on myself, and that caused a lot of resentment. But now I have the choice, because I'm aware of everything. I'm aware of all the programming, all the pain, all the trauma and everything. I'm aware of it all. So now I can see that there's a different decision to be made. There's a different way. There's a different path forward. There's a different path to move, to walk. And I chose to move on this new path, on this new journey of not only relying on myself, but connecting with others, reaching out to others. And even if I face rejection or abandonment or whatever the case may be, no matter what I face, I'm still dedicating myself to this new path because I know that this is the path for me in my heart. So that's how this podcast came to be, and that's the breakthrough that I had after I had this idea for the podcast. So that's just an example too of how going through what you go through, no matter what it is in life, is always going to lead you to where you need to be, as long as you trust it. The more that you fight against it, the more you're just fighting off your own success, for real. So I'll leave this off, this episode here, episode 0 here, and say that trust yourself. So if there's any advice that I'll give to my younger self, say it be like my teenage self, really just my inner child, my inner teenager, my inner younger adult, I guess. Any version of myself, throughout any point in time in this lifetime, I'd give this advice. And this goes for you as well. Trust yourself. Trust yourself from within. Trust what you're hearing. Trust what you're feeling, because it all is true. Use discernment as you move forward, but trust what you're being guided to do. So listen to your heart, listen to your intuition. That is your higher self or God speaking to you directly. So listen to that. Trust your intuition, trust your higher self, trust your inner wisdom, knowing that it's leading you to where you need to be. And then as you're walking that path, use discernment with your mind. So I'll leave this off here. This has been Razir with the Sacred Heart Space. Next show, I plan on having a guest. I'll let that be a surprise. But again, if you have any suggestions for who you'd like me to connect with and interview for the Sacred Heart Space, let me know. So I send this out with much love. Oh, and last thing, quick plug. I have a mentorship program, a mentorship group that I'm putting together. So those who want to learn, not just from me, but learn in a way that resonates with their soul, that resonates with their heart, that is heart-led, heartfelt, heart-centered, and also, again, use discernment from the mind. I teach self-mastery. I teach inner mastery. This is the Inner Mastery Mentorship Group. I'm hosting it on Patreon, and it's essentially just a group that you can join. And all of my knowledge, I'm putting everything that I have into this. All the knowledge, all the wisdom, all the experiences, all the information, everything that I have, I'm putting into this. And I'm structuring it in a way to where it's an ongoing program. It's an ongoing mentorship process that guides you through the initial, not just awakening phase, but the initial, understanding of self, because this is the Inner Mastery Mentorship Program. So we're focusing on learning ourselves from within in order to create and achieve healthy and sustainable success within ourselves and with anything that we do in life. So that's kind of like my baby right now. I look at it as like the seeds that I'm planting. I have a garden that's growing, and this podcast, this is part of the plant that I have in the garden. My mentorship program is another plant that I have in the garden. These two plants are going to be growing into trees that bear fruits, not only for me, but for everybody who's connected with it. So this is my plan moving forward. I'm putting everything that I have into this. And if if it's in your heart, if it's on your heart to support, then I greatly appreciate that. And it's not just supporting me, it's me being able to give back to you, me being able to serve you in your highest good. Because this is my purpose, my real purpose in life, my real calling in life, which is to share and guide as a mentor for people to navigate their inner world. Because I've been to as you've heard, I've been through some of the deepest, darkest depths of my soul, and also I've experienced some of the highest of the highs. So in every level in between. So I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but I do have the answers that work for me. And if they resonate with you, then they're for you as well. So that's the Inner Mastery Mentorship Program. I'll have the link down below in the description. All you gotta do is click on that, and it'll guide you to where you need to go. So with that being said, I send this out. So much love, so much honor, wholeness, and respect. Ashe.